Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. We've been away for a couple of weeks, but we're back with a show we think it will be enjoyable. And this is the second to last show for the 2023 season. So we hope you stay tuned. We're going to kick off this show with an interview with Joe Kurta, who's a local Southeastern Michigan lad who's trying to figure out a way to be a professional sailor in a rather unique way. Joe's going to tell his story about a company he started and a little bit about the opportunities that sailing's providing for him after he's got out of college. And I think I'll let Joe tell the story because I think it's one that's kind of remarkable. The second part of the show, we're going to pick up with the 2023 Lake Erie Intercollegiate Offshore Regatta. We're going to talk to Ohio State skipper Nadia Reynolds, who won the race with her crew. And we're also going to get a chance to talk to the administrator of the race, Dar Burgoyne from North Cape Yacht Club. And they're going to talk a little bit about club sailing as it relates to the intercollegiate club marketplace. And I think you'll find the story to be pretty interesting. These kids get a chance to be offshore. They do a little bit of buoy racing. But what's really the highlight, I think, is that owners are allowing boats to be used, and they're a part of the races. So it's building a real consensus. And up to, I think, 6 or 7 races this season between Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario. So it'll be fun to have that conversation. A lot's going on. We'll bring a retro perspective of the summer at the end of the season. We'll do that next week and kind of catch up with all the individual races. There's a bunch of folks who've won some races locally and regionally. We'll get that caught up next week. But we want to get on with this show. So up next is Joe Kurta, and we'll be back in a second. All right, welcome back. We have a very interesting conversation today. Somewhere along the line, I got a chance to see our guest today, Joe Kurta, who's a Bayview guy, Grosse Pointe South, who's now living on the East Coast. And obviously, Joe, first of all, the Fast Tango hat, that's pretty cool. We'll get into that. But everybody wants to be professional sailors, and there's 1,000 ways to become one. And we're going to talk a little bit about your trail because I think it's really interesting. It's interesting for a variety of reasons because much like an actress or an actor, you've been kind of gigging out looking for auditions as you're trying to make the world bigger and better for you in the world of sailing. And you're kind of fueling it by running a boat company. Now on your shirt, it says Captain's Boat. What does it say, Joe?
Captain's Boat Care.
Okay, so you take care of boats, but let's kind of go back to the beginning. And first of all, thank you for taking the time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It is an honor to be here. You've got such a star-studded group of people that you've had on the show, and I'm honored to be part of that.
It's been very fortunate that people in the community have been very nice when you ask them to, spend some time. So you've been a local guy for a long time. You obviously went to Grosse Pointe South. Mm-hmm. You started in the junior program at Crescent Sail Yacht Club, just down the street, which is kind of where you sort of got your teeth on it. From South and Crescent to Grand Valley, where you sailed with some pretty auspicious folks, Liam Walsh, who's now on the development team for the 49er for the U.S. Olympic program. Yeah. And kind of take us through Grand Valley and where we are today, and then we can have that conversation fueled by the fact that you are doing some stuff on the East Coast.
Yeah. So I went to Grand Valley, and one of the main reasons I wanted to go there is because I knew they had a pretty solid sailing team. And everything works in conjunction with Hope there. So we were really fortunate to be able to use a lot of their gear. And they had some really nice stuff that we were really lucky to use. We wouldn't have been able to acquire on our own. It was a brand new team. Elliot Lee, who's driving the boat in the picture behind you, he's also a DRYA guy. So he I was like, all right, I know the team's going to be solid. Elliot's a great sailor. And we did some really good sailing together. My sophomore year, I had the opportunity to study abroad. And I went to Sydney, Australia. And so every Wednesday, there was a Wednesday afternoon race and then a Wednesday twilight race. And I was racing on 52s and Rogers 46s. And it was just quite the incredible experience. And from that, I got the opportunity to race in the Sydney to Namibia race, which was 1,200 miles. And they had to delay the race a day for 50 knots and 30-foot seas. We got out of the straits and I'm like, I'm not in Kansas anymore. Like, this is pretty full on. But by the end of the race, I just fell in love with offshore ocean racing and just the feeling of having like 5 miles of water under you and hundreds of miles between you and the next point of land was incredible. And I did the transport back from Nemea, and I had finals the next week. So I'm studying on the nav station in my off shift for finals. I'm like, this is a pretty cool workflow to be a part of right now. So I was really fortunate for that, and an awesome experience. And so I come back to school, kept sailing for Grand Valley, um, and got linked up with Sleeping Tiger as well. And so they do some travel sailing. And out of college, I graduated in the midst of COVID, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but everybody was buying boats. So I started working on boats, and me and my brother kind of just looked at each other and like, hey, let's shoulder down into this, and let's really do our best. And so a lot of it about what I do now is, working as hard as I can, saving my money, keeping my costs low, and then finding races that I want to do and boats that'll take me with them. This past summer I did both Chicago and Port Huron on different boats, and then I did Trans Superior on a different boat. Um, as soon as I saw this race series out east, it was right before Port Huron, and I was looking at him like, if I play this right, I can do a quick another 1,000 miles on the East Coast this summer. This wouldn't be a bad deal. So we ended up out here for the Nika 300 series, which is
Before
it's
you
a
take me
really interesting series. So
explain what Nika series, the Nika, what's that acronym stand for?
NICA stands for the Northeast Keelboat Alliance. It's
Okay.
a relatively new thing, a bit of an offshoot of Oak Cliff, if you would. I don't want to speak out of context, but they take boats and they turbo them and they make them go really fast. They have a J120 that they cut the back of it off, made it wider, put a bigger mast in it, put a larger sprit on it, new keel, new rudder. They're doing a lot of really cool things with boats out here, and that's just one project. So the Nika is trying to serve as to bridge a gap between American sailing and French sailing. It
Okay.
seems as if the French are outsailing us currently
Why?
in the modern era. Well,
Why?
for what I've been told, I haven't experienced sailing with the French, but
Okay.
from the understanding that I've been given, the French are doing a good job at getting younger people offshore and getting them out there at a younger age. There's a lot more snot-nosed little kids, as I've been given it, out there on the water. And so the structure of this race series is half the crew has to be under 26. You have to carry a female, and you can have one unrestricted crew member. So
Okay.
you can only have 4 people on the boat altogether. It's a whole new ball game,
Right.
and it's a good introduction for young people into shorthanded sailing. I'd never had the opportunity to double hand. I still haven't done it yet, and I hadn't had the opportunity either to skipper in a distance race. And that was a really cool opportunity that I am so grateful for from the Nika guys. That it's just incredible. So they're trying to bridge the gap between American and French sailing and doing the Tour Bois. So we ended up placing second in the series, and we were given a $10,000 grant to go towards our campaign.
Wow.
Uh, right now, we are campaigning to further our funds because it'll cost us likely about $50,000 to do the whole series.
You
But
came across this just kind of sort of researching. Is that accurate?
yeah, I guess in a way I got lucky. I guess karmatically things, you stay good to people, you get lucky with things. It works out for me sometimes. So I just saw this series and I was like, I think I can get my act together and put this together. And we were the only out of town boat. We were the only out of town crew. Um, and it was really cool that to have the confidence and the ability to put it all together and to do well against people who know their boats, have sailed together as a crew, done 4-up situations, and we held our own and did very well. And I'm very proud of the crew. I'm very proud of ourselves and all the hard work that went into it, because it was a lot of work. There was, hey, we're just going to go and do this series, and you're getting in the car and it's like, I don't really know what's going to happen next, but we're going to do this and it's hopefully going to be awesome. And so, continuing on, it just makes every day really exciting since I've started this project. It's like, all right, what's going to happen next? This is really cool.
A side note, you mentioned the French are obviously outsailing the United States, and we kind of go through that. But isn't it more accurate to suggest that the Aussies and the Kiwis are probably the best in the world at this
I
point?
think that that's accurate. Yes,
I say that because
when I go to Sail GP, there's not a lot of there's a whole lot of Kiwi and Australian accents. Even on the America's Cup boat for Barcelona, it's half the crew came from down under. So I that was that. But you made a point about the French is they have more kids in boats, and I think that's kind of the point, that younger kids in boats. I think that's a huge factor. But part of your degree at Grand Valley was in entrepreneurship.
Indeed, yes.
And part of the reason we wanted to talk to you was that there's young kids your age. You are 25 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
I turned 25 in 2 weeks.
Okay. So you're almost 25.
Almost 20. Basically, I'm 25 for all intents.
But my point is that if you're 22, you're 19, and you want to be a professional sailor, you can be. And it's a hard road, and it's a different road, but you're taking it. And there's been various guys we've talked to that have, kind of worked their way up, but it's like any other profession. I'm assuming that the entrepreneurial program that Grand Valley has given you some insight, maybe how to beat the system a little bit by knowing where to make the next phone call or maybe write the next letter. Is that a fair estimation?
Yeah, definitely. Grand Valley did have a really solid structure of giving their students the ability to kind of be able to start a business, but in a mock structure. So I had a lot of experience writing up sales pitches, writing up budgets, writing up just, the different frameworks that you need in order to start with something. And in order to do that in a setting that was risk-free, was really, really helpful to me in my future. And that alone, I think, has propelled me very far. It's just when I pitch something to, like, say I want to do a bottom job. Okay, hey, this is how we're going to do this. This is the operating procedure we're going to go about it. I can do that with confidence because I've done it many times now, and I'm only 25 years old, and I have the confidence that I've done this, I don't know, a couple hundred times now. I've given people pitches, and I can do it with confidence. I understand what people are looking for. And at the end of the day, I want to provide a good product to people. And I think that shows with my work and my work ethic.
On the sailing side, though, at some point you can have a great pitch, but when you get on the boat, if you can't deliver the goods, the skill, whatever it is that you're doing, whether it be a foredeck or anything else, if you don't have the skills to go along with the pitch, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, no doubt. There's definitely, when you get offshore with somebody, you see through their BS pretty quickly, and I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to really be able to hone my skills and sharpen my knife, that I can sell the goods that I have been equipped with.
Well, in some of the races you're talking about, you're not exactly racing a two-handed beer league on Thursday. It's not racing at the America's Cup level, but it's real close. I mean, it's a half a step down from what you're doing, and that's been part of our conversation to try to. Those who are in sailing understand the sport very well. You're wearing a hat for fast tango. At that level, I always make the recommendation that it's almost like AAA baseball or AA baseball. These guys are serious about their boats. They spend, especially even the Great Lakes 52 fleet. This isn't just me going out with my O'Day and having a good day. These guys are invested in a very serious series of races, and they spend a lot of money to do it. So it's a hobby, certainly, but it's more than a hobby that a bunch of guys playing golf on the weekend. And that's kind of my point. You got to have the goods to be able to do it. And that's why it's kind of cool to see you following your trail up the trail, and kind of work through what makes sense. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And a lot of it too is this is my passion. This is the path in order for me to go sailing as much as I possibly can without owning a boat. That it's kind of just the equation I've been able to find in order to chase my love and my passion and what makes me tick, really. I love being offshore in the middle of the night driving. It's just this sense of freedom that is unparalleled to anything I've ever experienced anywhere else.
Obsession or avocation?
Oh, there's an element of both, for sure.
Okay.
No doubt. I'm an advocate for my obsession. I guess in a way, I think that it would be cool to advocate for other people to have a similar obsession, if you would. It's like, hey, this is a really cool thing. I advocate for more people to be a part of it because it's really cool. I hear about the 1980s and 400 boats on a Saturday, and that's just like, if I could time travel, I would love to be able to go back and see that. 400 boats on a Saturday in Lake St. Clair, like that would be really cool to see in my lifetime. I don't know if that would ever happen, but wow.
Well, just remember with time comes, a bit of gravy on the story. So, the stories get embellished a little bit as time goes on. Not to suggest that there weren't 400 boats on Lake St. Clair, but sometimes the best times are the days you're in. So that's part of it. Now, you've obviously put yourself in the middle because you're in New York now, and that's part of where there's just more opportunity and connection, I'm guessing, at places like Newport and around Long Island and places that you've been. And you have kind of a transient business. Am I correct?
Yeah, so we're a mobile detailing and painting service and care service. And so we kind of looking at it like, well, we were traveling all around Detroit. I mean, we can pick and choose our jobs and be a little bit more mobile and, maybe have more access and opportunities depending on where we're going. So I'm out here right now. My brother's in Detroit running the Detroit business. He's doing all the shrink wrapping, winterization, getting everything wrapped up because, we don't want to chase the shiny and lose our base, if you will.
Right.
We gotta keep our bread and butter that's kept us moving all these years. But our goals are to one day own a marina, and we would like to be the best in bottom work in the world, realistically. And we would like the boats to come to us and make Detroit its own hub for bottom work and to attract people to do the Mac. Hey, while your boat's in town, why don't you do the Mackinac? And I think that would be a really cool thing, and it would avail us the opportunity to aid to the sport and make it something cooler in Michigan in our own way.
At this point, if the business got in the way of your sailing progression of where you want to go, would you continue? What of the two? What's a priority in your life at the moment? I understand you have to live, and that's a fair question because obviously you got to have money to pay the bills and get around and the rest of it. But sometimes, you got to put aside whatever. If one got in the way of the other, which would win and which would lose?
See, that's a really tough question, and that's a question that I've been finding myself in more and more recently because growing towards buying a marina is becoming a bit more of a reality. And with Tour Voir, the opportunity to do Bermuda and the 100th this year, I'm looking at it like I'm booked for the year almost. So it's very difficult. It's one of those things that I'm almost trying to navigate so I don't have to do that. I'm trying to do my high level sailing here, go and set up my business and do as much work there, kind of go back and forth. That's the goal.
You sound like a diplomat.
It's one of those things where I would have to realistically, in the instance that I was given the choice that I have to make right now, it would be what wouldn't I have the opportunity for a year from now? That's what I would choose ultimately, is what would I only have the opportunity for this one time? And that's what I would choose, And if it's something like a Sail GP or an America's Cup, I think I would probably chase that because that's my dream and that's my goal. And I can always acquire a marina. I can figure that out in my 30s. I don't need to figure that out today.
Let me ask you another question because I'm trying to get to the core.
Yeah,
it's really hard to get to the level you're talking about on the sailing end of it without being single-minded. It just is, and it requires sacrifice. It really does.
It does. Yeah.
And when I ask the question, you're caught as that, there's that financial end of it on one side because you got a business, and the other side, and that's maybe a question that's unfair, but it seems to me those people in the world who've gone single-minded and attacked their dream without any reservation, regardless of consequence, are usually the ones that come out on top because they're so driven.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the point.
There's definitely a hell-bent craze to wanting to win races at the high level. And that hell-bent craze also transitions into my work. I also want to be the best in building boats and making boats, and I think that ultimately these two things work in tandem. And I'm trying to avoid having to, choose a racing career over a building career or vice versa. And I think one of the ways that we've been able to do that between me and my brother is we've developed a really strong team around us. We've got a really strong crew of people who can race and work on boats. And that's really been giving us the opportunity to do the sailing that we do. You know, we went down to Florida this past winter and did some racing, and we have the team around us that we were able to go down to Florida and race and not miss a beat. So we're really fortunate that we've been able to build a team around us that believes in what we're doing, believes in us, and we believe in them. And it's really cool.
Right.
So far, it's worked pretty well,
Right.
and I'm hoping that it can continue to work pretty well. I want the two to work in tandem. You know, kind
Right.
of use my racing as an opportunity to advertise for my boat work, and my boat work to advance my racing. You know, that's kind of been the equation, and it's been working.
Well, I think the Melguses have done pretty well at building boats and racing. I think we've had Harry and Harry Jr. on the show, and Harry Jr. is now on the America's Cup boat, and so they've done pretty well with it. So,
Indeed.
two quick questions to finish up, and first one would be really simple: what's next for you in sailing on the horizon?
So next for me in sailing is to continue to work on acquiring funding for the Tour Bois. That's my next current goal. And I'm hoping that competing in that race series will propel me into something bigger. I would like to sail around the world one day. That's a goal of mine. And I would like to compete at some sort of high level, whether it be Sail GP, America's Cup, Olympics, Volvo Ocean. I would like to do an event like that in my lifetime. That would be truly something special.
Dumbass question in the last to finish up with is: if I have a 35-foot boat, how much does it cost me to get my bottom cleaned?
Get your bottom clean.
Yeah.
So we've got a good diver actually right now. He charges $250 a foot, and
Okay.
he makes sure that every little bit's done. And we did 2 boats yesterday out here. Actually, he had a ball. We had a great time. It was a good time. So yeah.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Your website is listed underneath your name there. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, either Detroit here, obviously on the East Coast, they can have that conversation.
Yep, we're captainsboatcare.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. My personal cell phone is listed there, along with our work line. So that's how you can contact me. I'm around and I'm mobile and I'm eager.
Joseph, appreciate your time and best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was truly an honor that you asked me to do this. Thank you, sir.
We want to thank Joe for having the conversation with us about becoming a professional sailor. And if you have any use for his services, certainly look at the phone numbers at the bottom of his name there and give him a ring. I'm sure they do great work. We'll be up in a second with Nadia Reynolds and with Dar Burgoyne. We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back. We're talking with Nadia Reynolds, who is a senior at Ohio State, who just had a chance to win the North Cape Yacht Club's the 2023 Lake Erie Intercollegiate Offshore Regatta. We're going to talk about the regatta and Lake Erie and Western Lake Erie and the rest of it. 2 years ago, in fact, in the picture behind me, there's a young man with the beard and the longer hair from the University of Toledo had great success in the same race. Now another Ohio team has done really well and won it. And first of all, thanks for taking a couple seconds out. I know how busy your schedule is with sailing this fall, but congratulations on the offshore race, and maybe talk a little bit about the race before we get into actually the specifics.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be able to talk about it. Yeah, this is my second time going to, Leor. I went when I first transferred to OSU and I was the main trimmer. And that was my first ever big boat regatta. So it was really cool to be able to skipper it this time. I had a great team behind me. North Cape put on a great event. So it was a great time.
You do some buoy racing early part of the season and the first part of the weekend, and then obviously you do the offshore race. Is that the most fun?
I would say offshore race is the most fun just because I grew up a dinghy sailor, on essentially a pond. So I don't have these opportunities much. So it's really fun to do something out of the norm for me racing wise.
Okay, now you guys had a great weekend. Obviously, you took almost all first with the exception of 1 second. So you accumulated 6 points. Your second place team, who is from the University of Wisconsin, Family Truckster, I think is the name of that boat. They were second, and they were 12 points. So you obviously kind of dominated the weekend. So what was it that was so outstanding for your crew?
Yeah, I would say I think it really came down to tactics for us. As soon as we got off the line, being the fastest boat out there, that was definitely an advantage. And so getting off the line, finding our lane, and getting to the puffs first. And once we were ahead, kind of mirroring the competition behind, not letting them get to the opposite side of the course of us or anything, and not overcomplicating anything. Before every tack and jibe, I'm communicating with, everyone on my boat that everybody's ready. And I'd always say, let's make this tack the best tack. So really just taking our time with every maneuver and staying conservative.
How many on board the boat?
There was 7 of us and then 2 safety officers.
Okay, so let's talk specifically. This is a club sport at Ohio State. It's not obviously a varsity NCAA sport, but you're competing in some cases, not this particular race this year. This was a very much Midwestern race and almost a Big Ten race. Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, Michigan State, you had Grand Valley, Miami. So you had some Mid-America Conference teams. You're a club team, so you got to raise your money to be able to go places and sail. So that's another burden on your club, which is part of that discussion. Ohio State does a great job of supporting the club athletics on your campus. I know that big on the lacrosse side of things because we used to play them an awful lot. How much money does it cost to belong to your club, number one? And then how much time do you get to sail?
Yeah, so we try and keep our dues really cheap for our club. I think we're like potentially the cheapest club. So it's $100 a semester. And, that covers when you travel outside of just like getting food. Because we really just want to get new people sailing and into the sport. And we practice 2 to 3 days a week, typically Tuesdays and Thursdays from about 4:30 to 7:30. And then occasionally we'll throw in a Monday practice if we have a regatta coming up, just so that we get more time on the boats.
Where do you practice?
Hoover Sailing Club. It's about 25 minutes away from campus.
So big boats, offshore boats, or small stuff? 420s?
Yeah, just 420s.
Okay. So the offshore thing is really kind of an anomaly in that you get it once or twice or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
So here's my question. You're on obviously a 30-footer and you're coming to a boat you don't know. It's owned by most of the boats, I believe, all the boats were owned by the folks at North Cape who donated them to get the opportunity to race. So that's got to be a coup right there. You got to be pretty thankful for that opportunity. But now you're on a boat that you may not have ever been on before. What's the adjustments for that? And I say that because if you think of the Naval Academy, when they come to the Port Huron race, they know that boat because they've been on it for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. How hard is that?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. This was my 3rd time, maybe 4th time skippering a big boat in a regatta. So again, very new to me. All I really know is 420s and dinghies. So I just come into the mindset with, I know what I know about sailing and about skippering, and I'm going to put trust in my crew and just drive the boat fast. That's the skipper's job. So I really just focus on the speed aspect and rely on my crew to, help us get around the rest of the way.
We have a lot of viewership and obviously around Lake Erie. Now you're all the way down to Columbus. I know that's 4 hours south, but reality to it is there's about 3 large lakes in the Columbus area that you get the chance to sail on. And there's a lot of small boat yacht clubs in that area. So it's not unusual to get good sailors coming out of Ohio State.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah.
If you had a choice between a 420 and a bigger boat, you like the offshore stuff, the bigger boat stuff?
Ooh, that's a great question. I am really enjoying big boats because again, that's, not really how I grew up sailing. But I feel like dinghies they're my roots, that's where I learned everything. So for the time being, at least this season, I'm basically doing all big boats. So for the time I'm rocking with big boats, but I do really love getting in 420s.
Okay. I would be remiss not to ask this question, and that is if I were to talk to your crew, what would they tell me about the skipper?
Hopefully they would say that I'm organized, on top of it. And I try my best, to bring everybody together for the common goal. I'm very level headed. I don't believe in, ever yelling at my crew. That doesn't ever solve anything. So hopefully, they thought my communication was really good all around and that I was making the right decisions tactically for the team.
As a skipper, what's harder? Somebody who sailed who thinks they know what you want them to do, or a brand new, as you pointed out, you're trying to bring people to sailing. So you do get new crew members that have very little experience. So is that person who thinks they know a lot about sailing, or is it the guy what's harder to deal with, or somebody brand new for you as a skipper?
It's a great question. I mean, 3 of the people we had at Leor were very green to two big boats, and one of them just like to sailing in general. Thankfully, they, take the feedback very well and apply it very quickly. I would say maybe newer people would be easier because I guess they're not going to challenge what you say. They're going to trust that what you're saying is right versus, your good buddy who's been sailing for a long time. You might not see eye to eye on, something a little more trivial. But overall, we get along great in the boat with everybody.
Just personally, on a couple of personal questions. You're from Westerville
Yes.
and went to Westerville North. You don't know that.
Mhm.
There's two schools in Westerville, which is just north of Columbus. Actually northeast. Yeah, northeast. of
Mhm.
Columbus. You're studying what at Michigan at Ohio State?
Strategic communications with an entrepreneurship minor.
Okay, I asked you earlier, and I'll ask you just a curious. What does a 30-year-old Nadia Reynolds look like?
Yeah, again, so hopefully running a program, I'd love to be a program director, stay connected to sailing education, coaching, all that. But if I'm relying on my degree, I'm very interested in the advertising industry.
Okay, there's a lot of different. One of the guys that's going to be on the show is finding a way through the process. He's now over in Newport trying to figure out a way to do it. So he started a boat cleaning company. He wants to be a pro sailor, and there's not a lot of money available to be the Olympics and to be these various. So it's interesting now in the last few years, there's different avenues to get to be a pro, to get to make your career sailing. And it was a lot harder probably years ago, but there's different entrepreneurial. Your age group does a lot of entrepreneurial activity towards what they want to do, and I think that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Talk briefly about the guys at North Cape who put on a race like this.
Sorry, say that again.
Talk briefly about the guys at North Cape. This is a big time race, and it takes a lot of volunteers to run a race like this. I'm hoping I'm sure they ran it well, and so maybe just talk a little bit about the folks at North Cape.
Yeah, Dwayne and his wife, Lady Dar, they did a fantastic job. They're super nice, hospitable people. They made a ton of accommodations for us and other teams, letting us camp on the property and use the clubhouse and all that. And Dwayne, he just has a very outgoing personality. So it was just a super fun weekend. He interacted with our team and all the other teams a ton, all smiles on the water. And he set really good courses. Like, I don't have any negative feedback for anything about the courses he set. It was perfect.
How many events do you compete? Is it Ohio State that competes in the fall?
I believe we were signed up for 6. Unfortunately, Glior fell through with a boat breakdown, but we like 4 big boat regattas and 2 dinghy regattas, and then potentially, if this weekend goes well for part of our team, we'll be going to fall champs at the end of the season.
What's this weekend?
We are sending 6 sailors to Hope, and that is to try and qualify for fall champs. And then me and 2 other teammates are going to Sheboygan, Wisconsin for match race champs, and hope to qualify for nationals.
Okay, so you're saying about Hope? We're talking about Holland, Hope
Yes.
College. Okay,
Yes.
So they're probably sailing out of Macatawa, I'm guessing.
I believe so.
Okay, just talk briefly, and I'll this is my last question. In the club series, there's big boats. What do you race, and then do you have a spring season?
Yes, we do have a spring season. It is obviously shorter though, since it's so cold and we have to wait for the docks to go in the water. And then big boat wise, we really don't ever sail on the same boat twice. We've been on a J100 for IOR, which we actually did get put back on the same one this year. We've sailed J70 at Coast Guard. We did a Hobie 33 our first time at Leor, and then we just did the Henderson 30 this year at Leor, and now we are going into, I believe, Sonar 22s this weekend for match racing.
You had to love the Hobie 33.
Yeah, it was cool. I'd never heard of them before, but it was a fun boat.
You never heard of Hobie Alter?
Not a Hobie 33. I of course know about Hobies, but
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, yeah. I was actually
no, I just didn't know that specific model.
He was a neighbor of mine in California for about 4 years. It was
That's cool.
Awesome to be able. You look at a sale and know that your next door neighbor was the guy that sold the company to. It was. I just think Hobie 33s are really good boats. They look very much like. They're just really good sailboats. But anyway.
Yeah, it was fun.
Good. What's up next this weekend? You mentioned you're headed to.
Yeah, Sheboygan. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's 420s.
Sonar 22s.
Okay, well, good. Listen, congratulations on the win. at North Cape, and the best of luck the rest of the fall. And hopefully the snow comes pretty quick and you get back in the boat in the spring.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much. Hi, welcome back. We're talking with Dar Burgoyne from North Cape Yacht Club, and we're going to talk a little bit about the 2023 Offshore Lake Erie Intercollegiate Offshore Race. Let me start that over because I said it offshore twice. 5, 4. Welcome back. We're talking with Dar Burgoyne, who is a race director for the 2023 Offshore Lake Erie Race, Intercollegiate Race that happened about a week ago. And we had a chance to talk to Nadia Reynolds, who was a skipper on the Ohio State team who won it and was very complimentary about that. You'll see that earlier in the show. But Dar, that's a lot of work to do a race. And so let's start with, how much work does it take?
Just a lot of pre-planning ahead of time. The biggest part about this is like, with most regattas, owners are bringing their boats and stuff like that, and they bring their teams and everything. This is where we have to obtain boats and owners that are willing to donate their boat, their time to these college sailors, so the college sailors can, meet and everything. And then we have the college sailors that, once they get their team together and then they apply. So it's the hardest part, I would say, is really getting our donor skippers boats, I say.
We'll come back to what the owners have to do and what's provided for them in the process. But my first and simplest question for you is, why? For you, why do you, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? I have to look at it. The college, I've been involved. My son was a junior sailor, started out in opties and everything, and went through the programs and everything. He was a college sailor when he was in college. And I've been involved with the junior sailing programs on and off throughout the years and everything. And this is a niche market that hasn't been approached with the big boat sailing. College sailing's done a lot of little boat sailing, but it hasn't done the keel boat racing.
Right.
And so this is another avenue to bring them into the sport where they can do more of a team, team exercising and stuff like that, versus on a smaller boat, you only have a 2-man team. So this takes more. It takes more, working as a team. You got an owner that's got to be able to trust these kids on the boat and everything. And it's good because a lot of these kids they didn't grow up sailing. We're finding a lot of the college sailors, they didn't grow up, sailing. They weren't in junior programs. They didn't do opties. They didn't do 420s. So once they got to college, they got introduced to sailing. And then, so they're stepping on a big boat. And some of these kids are stepping on a boat for the very first time.
Yeah. No, it's a 3-day regatta. Am I correct? Or 2 days?
It's a 3-day regatta. We run a format. Friday, they all come in and they check in. And Friday's a practice day. So in the afternoon, they meet up with their, we try to get them hooked up with their owners ahead of time so they can kind of, do a meet and greet. And then Friday, we have a practice session. And then our PRO will go out and let them do, and then we run some starts so they can practice some starts.
So you do some buoy racing, obviously, and then the buoy racing goes to the offshore stuff, which I'm assuming comes on Sunday, right?
Right. Last year we did the format where they practice on Friday, and then Saturday they did windward lured races, and then Sunday they did a long distance race. So we changed things up a little bit this year because we found out that some of the kids, if they can't get in on Friday to practice with their team, it's kind of hard to throw them into a windward lured race right away, putting spinnakers up. So this year we changed the format a little bit and we had them do what we call a buoy race around buoys, a little bit, not so much throwing a spinnaker up right away. So they did one of those, and then we went into the windward lured races and then did the long distance race on Sunday.
Okay.
So they gave them an opportunity to kind of get a little feel of the boat.
If you come out of junior sailing, you come out of an opti into a 420, you literally could end your career by the time you're 21 or 22 still in a 420.
Right.
That's not an unusual, because they don't race much more than that in college. Are we doing enough offshore racing on bigger boats for kids, and for this case for college guys? I understand we do that at the NCAA level where they've got the opportunities at Brown and Old Dominion and Navy and those kinds of places where they got their own boats. I just wonder if we're doing enough for the college guys and this is also a club sport, so it's self-funded on top of it.
Right. I think, you know what, kids are going away to college. They're leaving home most of the time anymore. And I think that's where we lose that age group a lot, because they're not at their home club. They're not able to race, you know, with maybe the parents or maybe the skipper that they raced with while they were in high school. So it's kind of hard to gather that market and gather those kids because they are off away. And then once they get out of college, who knows where they're going, and then they're starting their career, and sometimes they just don't have time because there's, you know, they're starting their adulthood
Right.
too.
No, I get
So,
that. Well, and I also think that what gets lost is that there have been some very successful teams. The Toledo team from 2 years ago, and
right.
matched up against teams of NCAA scholarship caliber, did really well. So
Right.
obviously there's some, but then we go back to one of the conversations that we had with Nadia was, you know, you got kids on the boat who literally have never been on a sailboat before, and then you got people who've had some, you know, some race experience. And I said, what gives you a difficult time? A kid who thinks he knows something, or a kid who doesn't know anything? And that kind of goes back to that same subject. So it becomes an interesting mix of culture to try to figure out, when you're racing, in most cases, everybody on the boat has a job and they know what to do. So this is
Right.
another sort of page that these skippers have to deal with, and I think they do it really well.
And another thing is, like, this year we had a much younger, inexperienced set of kids than we did the year before. So at the end of the regatta, we asked, you know, who has a less than a year of keelboat experience underneath your belt? And we had probably a good 40% of them stood up. So we had a lot of young, inexperienced keelboat sailors with us,
Yeah.
which gives them the opportunity too. And a lot of these kids did not do small boat sailing. So you know what, though, I find even with the junior programs, everything ebbs and flows with seasons and stuff like that. You'll like, even with junior programs, you'll have clubs that will have real strong teams. They'll be powerhouse teams for years.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they take a dip and decline in participation and everything. And like, I've seen that with the University of Toledo Sailing Club. And you know, they've had where they've fought to keep a team, and then they're real strong. And I've also noticed that ebbs and flows with the strength of the junior programs in the area too, whether
Right.
the colleges have strong teams.
Well, a lot of time it goes back to leadership. If you've got
Yeah.
you know, if you got a continuity helps, right? If you have somebody that's
It
a junior
does.
sailing director that's been there for, you know, I don't want to say years and years, but, you know, 5, 6, 7 years at a junior sailing program is pretty unusual. And if you get
Right.
somebody like that, it tends to be a little more, there's a little more continuity to keep it growing in the right direction. I don't think there's, so here's my one of my questions. I'm a boat owner. I belong to any other yacht club. I belong to North Cape for the moment, and you need my boat. What's the phone call like for you? And is it arm twisting, or is it guys that are pretty willing to give those kids that opportunity? And then what's the team responsible for to the owner of the boat?
Okay. Right now, well, I'm very fortunate that I was really lucky. The last year when we started out, we had boat owners coming out of the woodwork because it was new and everything. And our only holdback was it was so early in the spring about, you know, the availability to get their boats in the water and get them ready for this regatta. So when we moved to September, we're thinking, oh, this is going to be great. We are very fortunate that almost all our boat owners from last year returned this year. But then we had conflicts with some other regattas for other ones. You know, of course, the hesitation with any boat owner is, you know, how inexperienced or how experienced is the crew, and are they going to damage my boat?
Right. That's the obvious
And the
question.
one thing when I approach people about donating their boat and their time and themselves for this regatta, I kind of look at it as that you are still, first of all, the boat owner is still on the boat.
Right.
So you at no time are to, just like you would do in any normal situation, you are not going to put your boat at risk. You're not going to put your team in danger and stuff like that. If you feel that if you have a team that maybe can't throw up a spinnaker, don't throw up a spinnaker. If there's a situation where you have to take over the helm for a bit, you take over the helm. You do not ever put your vessel in risk. We've gone 2 years so far. We've had no collisions or contact within the boats. They've been spaced out pretty fair. So, you know, it's the liability of the owner. And the last 2 years, we haven't had the teams put out down any deposits like for damage or anything.
Okay.
Luckily, we haven't had to use it either. So
Do kind of a crazy question, but obviously God did not create all boats equal. So you're trying to get as close to the boats as you can. Obviously, there's still handicaps on those boats, I'm assuming.
right.
So I show up and I've got this great heart and I want to give you my boat. And it turns out my boat's a submarine. Are you actually turning people down in that
Yes.
situation?
We have actually turned people down. One thing, in the process of when we're reaching out to people, I explained that we're going to try to get like boats, like perf ratings, like asymmetrical, symmetrical
Okay.
sails and stuff like that. So we want to try to get, so we're really looking at the perf ranges when we do that stuff and everything. Luckily, we're very fortunate. We have a huge fleet, or not huge, but a good sized fleet of Hobie 33s access, and they're all wonderful and donating their time. And that the returning, every boat that was this year, everybody that's participated this year has already told me that they are on board for next year. So my biggest hardship right now is finding more boats, because I had teams that were on a waiting list this year.
Wow. How many?
About 10. I could have fielded 10 more teams.
Wow.
We
That's a
had
lot.
teams, Texas A&M wanted to come. We had a team from Canada, a college from Canada. So we could definitely field more teams if I had more boats.
What's the entry fee for the colleges?
The one good thing about this, there is no entry fee or whatsoever. We go out, find sponsorship. Some of these regattas, the kids don't have to have an entry fee or anything, but maybe their meals aren't provided. I've been lucky enough to find sponsorship and everything that the kids can come. They pay their own way to get here. They find their own housing. And then I've been able to pretty much provide them with meals, all except lunch. So they get breakfasts on Saturday and Sunday. They get dinner Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, and I'm able to take care of my race committee and volunteers in the same aspect. So that's what I do all throughout the year, is I reach out and try to find sponsors and everything.
Have you ever tried to figure out how many hours it takes to put this together for one person in your case? How much time you got towards this?
I don't really, because I think it's a normal thing that I'm like, I might be sitting around one night watching a little TV and writing down ideas, or coming up with an idea and scribbling something down. And a lot of things since it's in place from the year before, we're just building on things. Like I know what, this year we ran into some problems with some awards, trophies and stuff like that. But then we found a whole new resource in that problem, because we reached out to somebody and they turned us on to a whole new person that's probably going to be with us for the next couple of years.
I once tried to keep track of time when I was the administrative manager of an organization, a sports organization. About halfway through the season, I made the determination that if I keep looking at the number I'm compiling, I'm going to lose my mind, because it was way too much time spent on something. And I just had to go back to the task, because if I started to concentrate on the hours, I'd have quit at the moment.
Yeah. My biggest thing is when we came to this, before we even started the very first one, is, they tried to do this over in the Cleveland area, and then they dropped it. And so when it was approached and came to, us to see about doing it, I like trying something different and new. And the whole idea of bringing the college kids, and it's a different market of kids, sailors and everything, and it's an age group that definitely we need to reach out to.
Yeah.
So I was all for it. It just.
I got to take a page out of Jerry Lewis. I got to think the owners who give their boats up and they're on the boats, because I'm assuming the owner is one of the two safety officers. Is that correct?
Right.
I'm assuming that those boat owners have to have, when they spend all that time for 2-3 days with these kids on the boat, all these college students. I got to think it's a little bit like Jerry Lewis. They do it for their own needs, because they realize those kids are that cool, and they develop long-term relationship with those kids just by paying it back.
They love it. They love it.
Yeah.
They love it. Last year, one of the skippers, before the kids arrived, he had went out and bought hats. with the name of his boat and handed the hats out to him as soon as they got there the first day. And that was the coolest thing. So everybody was like, this year they were going, oh, we want to all be on that boat. We hear that skipper's really cool.
Sure.
I mean, we've literally had, requests for, oh, we want this boat or we want, and that's a good thing. They want to come back and they want to come back to the same skipper they had too at times.
There's a pretty robust fall season. There's about 5 or 6 events, of which you're one of those. I know some of the guys from Ohio State who won your event are headed to both Macatawa and Hope College for one race, and then there's some small boat racing up in someplace up in the northern part of Wisconsin. So I know they're headed to those 2 places. So it sounds like they're getting opportunities because of folks like you who are putting the races on. So congratulations on that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're just trying to reach out, and you know what? It's just a fun event. I'm probably so exhausted come Monday when the event's over with, but I wouldn't do it any other way. I'm up at 5:30, coming to the club, making sure the kids get their breakfasts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't, stuff like this when I have a project and stuff like that. And I'll probably be sticking with it. It's not something I'm going to probably hand off in the near future because it's just a good thing. And
Cool.
Sometimes you just have to do those good things.
Well, I'm sure the kids thank you, and I appreciate your time. And
They are. The kids are wonderful. I did. That's the best thing about it is meeting all these kids from all the different colleges too, and asking what their majors are. And the cool thing again this year, I want to tell you, Craig, we did a mock protest
because
just to do it so the kids could learn about the protest room and how to carry on a protest and explain rules and how people interpret rules and everything with our judge. So that turned out, and they really liked that whole idea.
Well, it'd been interesting as a Spartan. It would have been cool to have an argument with Michigan. You could have brought those 2 teams in. We could have got a fist fight.
Well, our mock protest was with U of M and Ohio State.
Okay. All right. I'll leave that one on the level and just say, listen, that's a really good idea. Thanks for doing this, and certainly thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Just wanted to take the time to thank both Nadia and Dar for all the work they put in for a wonderful race. It's in its 2nd year. They already have a waiting list, which I think is kind of cool. I think the idea of a mock jury protest was pretty cool. Give them an idea of how it might work. Always trying to, enlighten and educate those who don't always know the most that they need to understand. That being the case, it was pretty cool. Also, thank you to Joe Kurta for his time. And we'll be back next week with a finishing show for the 2023 season. Until next week, for all the guys in back, my name is Greg Norman. See you next week.